Stop the Nazi game indeed, right? Hello to you all. Welcome to RHTVLive, where we cover politics and geopolitics, and of course, history. Very, very interesting. And we're going to show where we are streaming live from. Yep, from Maastricht. Hallo allemaal, daar zijn we weer in het mooie Maastricht. Ja, vanuit het zuiden des lands. En natuurlijk gaan we het hebben over politiek en geopolitiek en in dit geval ook geschiedenis. Ja, heel, heel erg belangrijk dat we dit allemaal begrijpen. Wat er gebeurt in de wereld en hoe de wereld eigenlijk zo'n beetje gevormd is. So, we're going to look at history. At Russian history. And why are we going to look at history? Because Tucker Carlson had an interview with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, and the first half an hour he gives history, right? How all these countries are Russian affiliated, and we're going to take a look at some history from Rurik to Revolution. Very interesting clip we found. Ja, erg interessante clip die we gevonden hebben over Rusland. Ja, de geschiedenis van Rusland, van Rurik tot de revolutie. We're going to take a look at this here. And Putin does not support me, okay? I don't get money from the Kremlin, or I never been to Russia. You know, I love my country, but I don't want any war, right? We need to understand the history of Ukraine, of Poland, of all these other states, and this is going to explain it very nicely. Dus we moeten kijken naar geschiedenis en we moeten een beetje begrip hebben voor wat er eigenlijk allemaal vooraf is gebeurd, hoe die staten zijn ontstaan, zoals Oekraïne, Wit-Rusland, Polen en noem het allemaal op. En dat geeft het heel mooi weer.
For thousands of years, the lands known today as Russia and Ukraine were inhabited by nomadic tribes and mysterious Bronze Age cultures. The only record they left were their graves. In the great open grasslands of the south, the steppe, they buried their chieftains beneath huge mounds called kurgans. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus called these people Scythians. Their lands were overrun by the same nomadic warriors who brought down the Roman Empire. The land was then settled by Slavs. They shared some language and culture, but were divided into many different tribes. Vikings from Scandinavia, known in the east as Varangians, rode up Russia's long rivers on daring raids and trading expeditions. According to legend, the East Slavs asked a Varangian chief named Rurik to be their prince and unite the tribes. He accepted and made his capital at Novgorod. His dynasty, the Rurikids, would rule Russia for 700 years. His people called themselves the Rus and gave their name to the land. Rurik's successor, Oleg, captured Kiev, making it the capital of a new state, Kievan Rus. A century later, seeking closer ties with the Byzantine Empire to the south, Vladimir the Great adopted their religion and converted to Orthodox Christianity. He is still venerated today as the man who brought Christianity to Ukraine and Russia. Yaroslav the Wise codified laws and conquered new lands. His reign marked the golden age of Kievan Rus. It was amongst the most sophisticated and powerful states in Europe. But after Yaroslav's death, his sons fought amongst themselves. Kievan Rus disintegrated into a patchwork of feuding princedoms, just as a deadly new threat emerged from the east. The Mongols under Genghis Khan had overrun much of Asia. Now they launched a great raid across the Caucasus Mountains and defeated the Kievan princes at the Battle of the Kalka River, but then withdrew. 14 years later, the Mongols returned. A gigantic army led by Batu Khan overran the land. Cities that resisted were burned, their people slaughtered. The city of Novgorod was spared because it submitted to the Mongols. Its prince, Alexander Nevsky, then saved the city again, defeating the Teutonic Knights at the Battle of the Ice, fought above a frozen lake. He remains one of Russia's most revered heroes. The Mongols ruled the land as conquerors. Their new empire was called the Golden Horde, ruled by a Khan from his new capital at Sarai. The Rus princes were his vassals. They were forced to pay tribute or suffer devastating reprisal raids. They called their oppressors Tatars. They lived under the Tatar yoke. Alexander Nevsky's son, Daniel, founded the Grand Principality of Moscow, which quickly grew in power. Under the great Uzbek Khan, the Tatars converted to Islam. A rising power, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania defeated the Tatars at the Battle of Blue Waters and conquered Kiev. 18 years later, Dmitry Donskoy, Grand Prince of Moscow, also defeated the Tatars at the Great Battle of Kulikovo Field. After years of infighting, the Golden Horde now began to disintegrate into rival khanates. Constantinople, capital and last outpost of the once great Byzantine Empire, fell to the Turkish Ottoman Empire. Some hailed Moscow as the Third Rome, the seat of Orthodox Christian faith. Now Rome and Constantinople had fallen. Meanwhile, the Grand Princes of Moscow continued to expand their power, annexing Novgorod and forging the first Russian state. At the Ugra River, Ivan III of Moscow faced down the Tatar army and forced it to retreat. Russia had finally cast off the Tatar yoke. Under Grand Prince Vasily III, Moscow continued to grow in size and power. His son, Ivan IV, was crowned the first Tsar of Russia. He would be remembered as Ivan the Terrible. Ivan conquered Tatar lands in Kazan and Astrakhan, but was defeated in the Livonian War by Sweden and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Ivan's modernizing reforms gave way to a reign of terror and mass executions fueled by his violent paranoia. Russia was still vulnerable, Raiders from the Crimean Khanate were able to burn Moscow itself. But the next year, Russian forces routed the Tatars at Molody, just south of the city. Cossacks now lived on the open steppe, a lawless region between three warring states. They were skilled horsemen who lived freely and were often recruited by Russia and Poland to fight as mercenaries. Ivan the Terrible's own son, the Tsarevich, fell victim to one of his father's violent rages, bludgeoned to death with the royal scepter. The Cossack adventurer Yermak Timofeyevich led the Russian conquest of Siberia, defeating Tatars and subjugating indigenous tribes. In the north, Arkhangelsk was founded, for the time being Russia's only seaport linking it to Western Europe, though it was icebound in winter. Ivan the Terrible was succeeded by his son, Fyodor I, who died childless. It was the end of the Rurikid dynasty. Ivan's advisor, Boris Godunov, became Tsar. But after his sudden death, his widow and teenage son were brutally murdered, and the throne seized by an impostor claiming to be Ivan the Terrible's son. He too was soon murdered. Russia slid into anarchy, the so-called Time of Troubles. Rebels and foreign armies laid waste to the land, and the population was decimated by famine and plague. Polish troops occupied Moscow. Swedish troops seized Novgorod. The Russian state seemed on the verge of extinction. In 1612, Russia was in a state of anarchy. They called it the Time of Troubles. The people were terrorized by war, famine, and plague. Up to a third of them perished. Foreign troops occupied Moscow, Smolensk, and Novgorod. But then, Russia fought back. Prince Pozharsky and a merchant, Kuzma Minin, led the Russian militia to Moscow and threw out the Polish garrison. Since 2005, this event has been commemorated every 4th of November as Russian National Unity Day. The Russian Assembly, the Zemsky Sabor, realized the country had to unite behind a new ruler and elected a 16-year-old noble, Mikhail Romanov, as the next Tsar. His dynasty would rule Russia for the next 300 years. Tsar Mikhail exchanged territory for peace, winning Russia much-needed breathing space. His son, Tsar Alexei, implemented a new legal code, the Sabornoye Uluzhenie. It turned all Russian peasants, 80% of the population, into serfs, effectively slaves, their status inherited by their children and with no freedom to travel or choose their master. It was a system that dominated Russian rural life for the next 200 years. The head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Nikon, imposed religious reforms that split the church between reformers and old believers. It's a schism that continues to this day. Ukrainian Cossacks, rebelling against the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, recognized Tsar Alexei as overlord in exchange for his military support. It led to the 13 Years' War between Russia and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Russia emerged victorious, reclaiming Smolensk and taking control of eastern Ukraine. A revolt against Tsarist government, led by renegade Cossack Stenka Razin, brought anarchy to southern Russia. It was finally suppressed, Razin was brought to Moscow and executed by quartering. The sickly but highly educated Fyodor III passed many reforms. He abolished Mesnichestva, the system that had awarded government posts according to nobility rather than merit, and symbolically burned the ancient books of rank. But Fyodor died aged just 19. His sister Sophia became Princess Regent, ruling on behalf of her younger brothers, the joint Tsars Ivan V and Peter I. After centuries of conflict, Russia and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth signed a treaty of eternal peace. Russia then joined the Holy League in its war against the Ottoman Empire. Sophia's reign also saw the first treaty between Russia and China, establishing the frontier between the two states. At age 17, Peter I seized power from his half-sister Sophia. Peter became the first Russian ruler to travel abroad. He toured Europe with his Grand Embassy, seeking allies for Russia's war against Turkey and learning the latest developments in science and shipbuilding. The war against Turkey was successfully concluded by the Treaty of Constantinople. Russia gained Azov from Turkey's ally, the Crimean Khanate, and with it, a foothold on the Black Sea. Peter made many reforms, seeking to turn Russia into a modern European state. He demanded Russian nobles dress and behave like Europeans. He made those who refused to shave pay a beard tax. Peter built the first Russian navy, reformed the army and government, and promoted industry, trade, and education. In the Great Northern War, Russia, Poland, Lithuania, and Denmark took on the dominant power in the Baltic, Sweden. The war began badly for Russia with a disastrous defeat to Charles XII of Sweden at Narva. But Russia won a second Battle of Narva, before crushing Charles XII's army at the Battle of Poltava. On the Baltic coast, Peter completed construction of a new capital, St. Petersburg. The building of what would become Russia's second largest city among coastal marshes was a remarkable achievement, though it cost the lives of many thousands of serfs. The Great Northern War ended with the Treaty of Neustadt. Russia's gains at Sweden's expense made it the new dominant Baltic power. 4 years before his death, Peter was declared Peter the Great, father of his country, emperor of all the Russias. Peter was succeeded by his wife Catherine, then his grandson Peter II, who died of smallpox, aged just 14. Empress Anna Ivanovna, daughter of Peter the Great's half-brother Ivan V, was famed for her decadence and the influence of her German lover Ernst Biron. During Anna's reign, Vitus Bering, a Danish explorer in Russian service, led the first expedition to chart the coast of Alaska. He also discovered the Aleutian Islands, and later gave his name to the sea that separates Russia and America. After Anna's death, her infant grandnephew Ivan VI was deposed by Peter the Great's daughter Elizabeth. Ivan VI spent his entire life in captivity. Until age 23, he was murdered by his guards during a failed rescue attempt. Elizabeth, meanwhile, was famed for her vanity, extravagance, and many young lovers. But she was also capable of decisive leadership. In alliance with France and Austria, Elizabeth led Russia into the 7 Years' War against Frederick the Great of Prussia. The Russian army inflicted a crushing defeat on Frederick at the Battle of Kunersdorf, but failed to exploit its victory. Meanwhile, in St. Petersburg, the Winter Palace was completed at vast expense. It would remain the monarch's official residence right up until the Russian Revolution of 1917. Peter III was Peter the Great's grandson by his elder daughter Anna Petrovna, who died as a consequence of childbirth. Raised in Denmark, Peter spoke hardly any Russian, and greatly admired Russia's enemy, Frederick the Great. So he had Russia swap sides in the 7 Years' War, saving Frederick from almost certain defeat. Peter's actions angered many army officers, and he'd always been despised by his German wife, Catherine. Together, they deposed Peter III, who died a week later in suspicious circumstances. His wife, Catherine, became Empress of Russia. Her reign would be remembered as one of Russia's most glorious. In the early 1700s, Peter the Great's reforms put Russia on the path to becoming a great European power. But it was his grandson's German wife, Catherine, who deposed her husband to become Empress of Russia, who oversaw the completion of that transformation. Like Peter, she too would be remembered as the Great. Catherine was a student and admirer of the French Enlightenment, and even corresponded with the French philosopher Voltaire. She reigned as an enlightened autocrat. Her power was unchecked, but she pursued ideals of reason, tolerance, and progress. Catherine became a great patron of the arts and learning. Schools and colleges were built. The Bolshoi Theatre was founded, as well as the Imperial Academy of Fine Arts, while her own magnificent collection of artwork now forms the basis of the world-famous Hermitage Museum. Catherine encouraged Europeans to move to Russia to share their expertise, and helped German migrants to settle in the Volga region, where they became known as Volga Germans. Their communities survived nearly 200 years, until on Stalin's orders, they were deported east at the start of World War II. Catherine's reign also saw enormous territorial expansion. In the south, Russia defeated the Ottoman Empire, winning new lands and the fortresses of Azov and Kerch. But then Catherine faced a major peasant revolt, led by the renegade Cossack Yemelyan Pugachev. The rebels took many fortresses and towns and stormed the city of Kazan before they were finally defeated by the Russian army. Catherine then forcibly incorporated the Zaporozhian Cossacks into the Russian Empire and annexed the Crimean Khanate, a thorn in Russia's side for 300 years. Russia's new lands in the south were named Novorussia, New Russia. Sparsely populated, they were settled by Russian colonists under the supervision of Prince Potemkin, Catherine's advisor and lover. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, exhausted by war and at the mercy of its neighbors, was carved up in a series of partitions, with Russia taking the lion's share. Poland did not re-emerge as an independent nation until 1918. Russia inherited a large Jewish population from Poland, who Catherine decreed could live only in the so-called Pale of Settlement, and were excluded from most cities. In France, the French Revolution led to the execution of King Louis XVI. Catherine was horrified, and in the last years of her reign, completely turned her back on the liberal idealism of her youth. 3 years later, Catherine died, ending one of the most glorious reigns in Russian history. She was succeeded by her son, Paul, a man obsessed by military discipline and detail, and opposed to all his mother's works. Russia joined the coalition of European powers, fighting revolutionary France. Marshal Suvorov, one of Russia's greatest military commanders, won a series of victories against the French in northern Italy. But the wider war was a failure. Meanwhile, Paul's reforms had alienated Russia's army and nobility, and he was murdered in a palace coup. He was succeeded by his 23-year-old son Alexander, who shared his grandmother Catherine's vision for a more modern Russian state. His advisor, the brilliant Count Mikhail Speransky, reformed administration and finance.
Now this guy is pretty interesting. Alexander I, right? He's really interesting. He fought Napoleon. You know, when Napoleon went all the way to Moscow, he was hiding in St. Petersburg. You know, he defeated Napoleon. He didn't even do much. It was the weather that defeated Napoleon, basically. Very, very cold. Many people had died along the way back home to France. Very interesting figure, Alexander I. But we'll keep watching.
Yet the emperor refused to back his plans for a liberal constitution. Ultimately, it was war with France that would dominate Alexander's reign. France had a new emperor, Napoleon Bonaparte, who inflicted a series of defeats on Russia and her allies at Austerlitz, Eylau, and Friedland. But at Tilsit in 1807, the two young emperors met and made an alliance. Russia attacked Sweden, annexing Finland, which became an autonomous Grand Duchy within the Russian Empire. But then, in 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia. At Borodino, French and Russian armies clashed in a gigantic battle, one of the bloodiest of the age. Napoleon emerged victorious, but the Russian army escaped intact. Napoleon occupied Moscow, which was destroyed by fire. And when Alexander refused to negotiate, the French army was forced to make a long retreat through the Russian winter and was annihilated. Napoleon had been dealt a mortal blow, and Russia, alongside Prussia, Austria, and Britain, then led the fight back, which ended in the capture of Paris and Napoleon's abdication. At the Congress of Vienna, as part of the spoils of war, Alexander became King of Poland. Then, with Austria and Prussia, he formed the Holy Alliance, with the aim of preventing further revolutions in Europe. Meanwhile, in the Balkans and Caucasus, Russia had been waging intermittent wars against the Ottoman Empire, Persia, and local tribes. The frontier had been pushed south to incorporate Bessarabia, Circassia, Chechnya, and much of modern Georgia, Dagestan, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. But the peoples of the Caucasus bitterly resisted Russian rule. Russia's attempt to impose its authority on the region led to the Caucasian War, a brutal conflict fought amongst the mountains and forests that would drag on for nearly 50 years. Alexander was succeeded by his brother Nicholas, a conservative and reactionary. But parts of Russian society had now developed an appetite for European-style liberalism, including certain army officers who'd seen other ways of doing things during the Napoleonic Wars. They saw Nicholas as an obstacle, and the new emperor's first challenge would be military revolt. (1825). Victory over Napoleon had confirmed Russia's status as a world power. But there was discontent within Russia amongst intellectuals and army officers, some of whom had formed secret societies to plot.
This is also very interesting, the Decembrists, right? This is the first intellectual revolution against the monarchy. But yeah, we gave some background here. And of course, we're going to watch Tucker Carlson talk with Putin, right? So, there we go. Tucker Carlson interviews Vladimir Putin, and it looks like he's, the facial expression is a bit weird, but oh well. Let's take a look at this here.
My ignorance, what is denazification? What would that mean? What is...
Да, вот я как раз хочу сейчас об этом сказать. Это очень важный вопрос. Денацификация.
That is what I want to talk about right now. It is a very important issue. Denazification. After gaining independence, Ukraine began to search, as some Western analysts say, its identity. And it came up with nothing better than to build this identity upon some false heroes who collaborated with Hitler. I have already said that in the early 19th century, when the theorists of independence and sovereignty of Ukraine appeared, they assumed that an independent Ukraine should have very good relations with Russia. But due to the historical development, those territories were part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Poland, where Ukrainians were persecuted and treated quite brutally as well as were subject to cruel behavior.
So we just saw that, right? The Polish-Lithuanian Empire, that's why it fell apart, basically. And Putin is giving some history lessons, right? And Tucker Carlson doesn't even know anything about Russia. So this is why Putin is giving a long introduction about the state of Russia, how it was formed and how these other states formed surrounding Russia. So very, very interesting.
There were also attempts to destroy their identity. All this remained in the memory of the people. When World War II broke out, part of this extremely nationalist elite collaborated with Hitler, believing that he would bring them freedom. The German troops, even the SS troops, made Hitler's collaborators do the dirtiest work of exterminating the Polish and Jewish population. Hence this brutal massacre of the Polish and Jewish population, as well as the Russian population too.
He knows his history, right? His history is very important. Russia has been attacked ever since, basically, it was born, You have the Gold Horde. We all saw that, right? You know, they wanted to take over Russia, and so it's been attacked ever since the birth of Russia, and Russia has been attacking too, right? The Ottoman Empire and stuff like that. You know, so yeah, those were other times.
С Гитлером сотрудничали. Вот отсюда вот эта жестокая резня.
This was led by the persons who are well known, Bandera, Shukevich. It was those people who were made national heroes. That is the problem. And we are constantly told that nationalism and neo-Nazism exist in other countries as well. Yes, they are seedlings, but we uproot them, and other countries fight against them. But Ukraine is not the case. These people have been made into national heroes in Ukraine. Monuments to those people have been erected. They are displayed on flags. Their names are shouted by crowds that walk with torches, as it was in Nazi Germany.
So Bandera killed a lot of Jewish and other ethnicities, right? And now he is made a hero. There are statues of him, you know. So is that something to look up to? Really? I don't think so. George Washington was a general, right? But he freed America from the British colonies. So, and, you know, he didn't fight back. He didn't retaliate to Britain. No. He just said, this is our country, you know, the birth of our country, and leave us alone. We will leave you alone, you leave us alone, right? No foreign intervention. But Russia is a different history, you know, and yeah. People need to understand history. Ukraine has always been a part of Russia, right? So you have many Russian-speaking people in Ukraine. So, and now in Ukraine, you have a radical group attacking the Russian-speaking Ukrainians. You know, really sad to see. And Putin is saying about the Canadian Parliament, right? They were clapping for a Nazi, someone who killed a lot of Russians.
Позволит. Они на флагах, они их имена кричат.
These were people who exterminated Poles, Jews, and Russians.
Это люди, которые уничтожали поляков, евреев и русских.
It is necessary to stop this practice and prevent the dissemination of this concept. I say that Ukrainians are part of the one Russian people. They say, no, we are a separate people. Okay, fine. If they consider themselves a separate people, they have the right to do so, but not on the basis of Nazism, the Nazi ideology.
Would you be satisfied with the territory that you have now?
Нет, сейчас закончим. Вы же задали вопрос по неонацизму и денацификации.
I will finish answering the question. You just asked a question about neo-Nazism and denazification.
Замалчивается на Западе.
Look, the president of Ukraine visited Canada. The story is well known, but being silenced in the Western countries.
Спикер парламента.
The Canadian Parliament introduced a man who, as the Speaker of the Parliament said, fought against the Russians during the World War II. Well, who fought against the Russians during the World War II? Hitler and his accomplices. It turned out that this man served in the SS troops. He personally killed Russians, Poles, and Jews. The SS troops consisted of Ukrainian nationalists who did this dirty work. The president of Ukraine stood up with the entire Parliament of Canada and applauded this man. How can this be imagined? The president of Ukraine himself, by the way, is a Jew by nationality.
You don't want to know how many people died during the Second World War, right? The Central Powers, Germany, waging war and stuff like that, taking over Poland, and many lives have been lost during the Second World War in preparation for the Second World War, right? So how can you idolize a Nazi that killed a lot of people? Something is wrong there, something is wrong.
Really, my question is, what do you do about it? I mean, Hitler's been dead for 80 years. Nazi Germany no longer exists. And so, true. And so I think what you're saying is you want to extinguish or at least control Ukrainian nationalism. But how? How do you do that?
Вот послушайте меня. Ваш вопрос очень тонкий.
Listen to me. Your question is very subtle, and I can tell you what I think. Do not take offense.
Of course.
Он, казалось бы, тонкий, он очень противный, этот вопрос.
This question appears to be subtle. It is quite pesky.
Значит,
You say Hitler has been dead for so many years, 80 years. But his example lives on. People who exterminated Jews, Russians, and Poles are alive. And the president, the current president of today's Ukraine, applauds him in the Canadian Parliament, gives a standing ovation. Can we say that we have completely uprooted this ideology if what we see is happening today?
No, it's still there. There are still extreme jihadis and stuff like that. That's also an ideology, right? It's still there. It's not rooted out. Look at all these Canadians. They're applauding for a Nazi. That is very, very weird, In the Netherlands, we were occupied by the Nazis, right? We have a distaste for Nazism or fascism. We have a distaste to that. Yet, when it's another country, such as Ukraine, we sponsor the Nazis, right? We sponsor the extremists taking out Russian-speaking Ukrainians. Very, very sad to see. It's insanity.
That is what denazification is in our understanding. We have to get rid of those people who maintain this concept and support this practice and try to preserve it. That is what denazification is. That is what we mean.
Right. My question was a little more specific. It was, of course, not a defense of Nazis, neo or otherwise. It was a practical question. You don't control the entire country. You don't control Kiev. You don't seem like you want to. So how do you eliminate a culture or an ideology or feelings or a view of history in a country that you don't control? What do you do about that?
А вы знаете, как вам не покажется странным, в ходе переговоров в Стамбуле...
You know, as strange as it may seem to you, during the negotiations in Istanbul, we did agree that we have it all in writing. Neo-Nazism would not be cultivated in Ukraine, including that it would be prohibited at the legislative level. Mr. Carson, we agreed on that. This, it turns out, can be done during the negotiation process. And there's nothing humiliating for Ukraine as a modern civilized state. Is any state allowed to promote Nazism? It is not, is it? That is it.
He has a point there. He's got a point. Should you, as a government, support the radical people killing other people? Would you support that? I would not, right? That is not the way to go. So it's Putin is not the bad guy here. It is us who are bad, right? Or our governments that are bad, because they don't think for the country anymore. They're ruled over by shadowy organizations such as the WEF, Bilderberg Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, and all that crap. This is what's happening. We don't have leaders. Trump was a leader, right? Now, Trump also has faults. He's done stupid stuff, such as giving the Golan Heights to Israel. You shouldn't have done that, But Trump was a leader. If we look at Joe Biden, right, it really is amazing. Really, really is amazing. Joe Biden had said, Sisi is the president of Mexico. I'm not kidding. I'm serious here. So we're also going to take a look at that. It really is amazing that America has such a corrupt president. Putin was the one, according to Putin himself, right? But he was the one saying, I want to be part of NATO. I want to be part of the Europe you guys have. But no. We're not going to, have Russia on our side. No. We need an enemy, right? We need an enemy. This is how it goes. So, for the people old enough to remember, we had the Iraq War. You guys remember that? The first Gulf War, right? Oh, dictator in Iraq, blah, 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 blah. He's very dangerous. Oh, dictator. So you remove the dictator without even thinking of what you're doing. America, when they intervened, they dissolved the Ba'ath Party. And the Ba'ath Party are, people in the system. You're talking about firemen, police, the hospital. Everyone was basically a member of the Ba'ath Party, right? So you have a power vacuum you guys created. Well, not, your government created this, and it's really is amazing, man. People don't even think about that. People don't think about the consequences, right? What they're actually doing. There's no long-term agenda here. During the Bush era, America wanted to have a footprint in the Middle East, right? So you have Afghanistan that was attacked because there were terrorist factions over there, such as the Taliban, right? So they were attacked, and you had Iraq that was attacked during the Bush era. You guys remember this, right? Now, Syria was an ally of the US back then, right? But, a lot has changed because Saudi Arabia and Qatar had made a deal to make a pipeline through Syria, and Syria didn't even know about that deal, right? And they said, no, we don't want a pipeline. So Syria also had a power vacuum, right? 2 kids were killed in Homs, one of the cities in Syria, and lots of people were protesting. The whole country was protesting, which created a power vacuum, which was good for the proxies that were waiting outside of Syria to basically infiltrate and attack. This is how you got the Syrian war. And still a war. The proxies are still there. We have proxies in Aleppo and Idlib. Over here you have Idlib in Aleppo, and in the east of Syria, northeast, you have American troops basically giving support to the Kurds, right, which are here in north of Syria. You have the Kurdish population, and America supports them, even though they're not even invited in Syria, right? And they're also still in the U.S. is still in Iraq and north of Baghdad. So they're still in the Middle East. We have American troops in Jordan who got killed, right? And a retaliation strike was done in Syria over here at the Golan Heights, right? And many rockets in Syria and Iraq hitting some targets, you know. So it's all one big game, you know, and we are not involved in it. But we do feel the consequences of it. The Syrian civil war brought a lot of Syrians all the way to the Netherlands, right? We have a small country, you know, if you zoom it out, it's very hard to find on the map. So, you know, and we have 5,000 somewhat Syrians, or somewhat, you know, along those lines. And it's, you know, very sad to see, because those Syrians can go back. You know, the country is stable, even though there are proxies still. It's a frozen conflict. And this is also what's happening in Ukraine. There's also a frozen conflict. If we look at Ukraine, you see, the Russian army is not offensive, it's defensive. If you look at Ukraine, the Russian army is in the east of Ukraine, right? And they're basically going forward and then draw a line, then go backward, and then make obstacles, right? Which is very hard for the Ukrainian army to, you know, to pass through. And this is why Russia is winning the war, basically. So they go forward and then, you know, make obstacles when they go back, right? And then they go to the defensive line, and then they wait. You know, come over here, Ukrainians, come on. You want to attack us? Well, we got some obstacles for you. So this is happening, right? And it's very sad to see because so many lives are lost. Who profits from this? Not the Ukrainians, not the Russians. Who profits from this? The military industrial complex. They profit from it, right? Raytheon and other facilities and stuff. You know, it's really, really bad, really. But we're going to look at Joe Biden, and let's see what Paul Joseph Watson has to say about Joe Biden. It's here.
We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin.
And they're not happy. They're really not happy. CNN's Erin Burnett is hopping mad.
Tucker Carlson. They're in Moscow to interview Putin.
Incensed that Tucker might engage in a softball interview.
This was Putin's mouthpiece in the United States.
Because Erin would never engage in a softball interview with a major Eastern European political leader, would she?
As a human being, so many people look up to you. They rely on you. No one can imagine how hard that is. Do you do anything for yourself? Are you ever able to take a minute to read or to listen to music or something to sort of give yourself that a moment?
I have such moments important to be in silence, to be alone. And early in the morning, when there are no sounds.
What music do you like?
Wow, such hard-hitting questions, Erin. Not a fawning softball interview at all.
AC/DC, I don't understand all the words. Maybe it's too old, the music for...
I understand. We're the same. Look at them talking about him like a celebrity. Everything he does on camera, breathlessly repeated.
We're the same.
Definitely there as a Putin-supporting celebrity. Look at them talking.
So she's interviewing Vladimir Zelensky, right? And laughing at every word he says. It's like, oh my, wow, that's a good, wow, what a president you are, you know. Foaming at the feet of Zelensky, you know. And it's very, very weird to see that she is saying that Tucker Carlson is, you know, a puppet of Putin and this and that and blah, 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 blah. You know, this is not journalism. This is attacking Tucker Carlson, right? Whilst you are interviewing Zelensky. It's very, very sad to see that, you know, the media has degraded. We also have Mika Brzezinski, who says, we think for you, right? So we also have another clip of Paul Joseph Watson. It begins.
Dismissed as just a partisan attack, has now exploded in what will likely become the biggest controversy of the election. Special counsel Robert Hur concluded that Biden did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended, and forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term began. He did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died. Now even regime-compliant reporters are being forced to challenge Biden on his mental deficiencies.
Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
He responded by getting angry.
I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet.
And asserting his cognitive health and memory was just fine.
Your memory has gotten worse, Mr. President.
My memory is not good. My memory is fine.
Such a good memory, he thinks the president of Egypt is the president of Mexico.
Conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially the president of Mexico, Sisi.
Then within hours, he said he was a president for green states.
When we pushed all these programs, I said I'm going to be a president for everybody, whether you live in a red state or a green state.
This,
man, the guy is boring. You know, have you listened to that? I mean, it's like, oh my God, I thought I was slow in talking. But here, listen to this here.
My memory is not good. My memory is fine.
Such a good memory, he thinks the president of Egypt is the president of Mexico.
The conduct of the response.
Falling asleep here.
In the Gaza Strip has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi.
Then within hours,
the president of Mexico, Sisi. Now, okay, we follow politics and stuff like that, and we know that the president of Mexico is not Sisi. That is the president of Egypt. The president of Mexico is, here we have him, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Yeah. So that is the president of Mexico. Sisi is the president of Egypt. Here we have Sisi, which was a general during the days of Mubarak, which was a long-standing politician, also deemed as a dictator, right? But this is the president of Egypt, not the president of Mexico. Oh my God, man. Really? Really? You know, it's really amazing. Even I know this. And I'm not even the president. You know, it's really amazing. Really is amazing. So what else do you got, Paul Joseph Watson?
As he said, he was a president for green states.
When we pushed all these programs, I said I'm going to be a president for everybody, whether you live in a red state or a green state.
This after he claimed he spoke to
a red state or a green state. Now, my American politics is quite good, but I thought there were red states and blue states, meaning the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. But a green state, I have not heard of that. Maybe I need to ask some American dude.
Two former European political leaders who have been dead for decades. As the Telegraph reports, for perhaps the first time, Her's report elevates the controversy above the partisan fold. For one thing, these revelations about Biden's memory do not come from partisan commentary or from an apparent slip-up on camera while on the campaign trail. They've been released by a neutral official charged with investigating evidence in this case and refer to a behind-closed-doors interview that, by the president's own admission, he took extremely seriously. An ally told NBC News this is the worst day of Biden's presidency. Another Democrat called it beyond devastating. It confirms every doubt and concerns that voters have. If the only reason they didn't charge him is because he's too old to be charged, then how can he be president of the United States? Nigel Farage predicts Biden won't even make the convention in July.
I mean, the man's got senile dementia. I've been saying that for some month. Oh, don't be so beastly, Nigel. No, he's got senile dementia. He's not just the leader of America, he's the leader of the free world. And under his tenure, many of these awful things around the world have happened. He is clearly totally incapable of the job. And I don't agree with you, Stephen. I don't think it will be a Trump-Biden runoff. I think they'll ditch him before the Democrat convention takes place in July.
Democrats are now facing the very real prospect of having to scramble for a last-minute replacement or de facto.
Now, who will that be? Maybe the governor of California. What's his name? That slimy guy. You know, it's like, oh my God, man. The Democrats don't have anyone sane, in the party to for incumbent as president. It's like, oh my God, man. But there is Donald Trump, right? So there's also some independent guy, what's his name? Colonel, I wanted to say Sanders, but that's KFC, right? Oh, we played him a couple of episodes ago. So, yeah, we have that going on. Really, really sad to see how the world is devolving, right? We're not going forward. We're taking steps backward. So let's hope that Donald Trump becomes president and, bring back sanity, right? We want women's sports with real women, not women that have beards and are more hairy than a Sasquatch. We don't want that. We want to see women doing women's sports. We want to see men doing men's sports, right? The world is turned upside down, man. Anyway, we're going to take a look at Soup Mama. She is going to East Palestine, not in the Middle East, but in America, right? There's also a place called Palestine. And the train derailment, which Joe Biden probably forgot, is still going on in East Palestine. So we're going to take a look at Soup Mama.
I knew it was Taggart. I just didn't know if it was road or street off the top of my head. Good afternoon, Penny. And we're going to do a 1 year later drive through Ground Zero, where we had 3 black SUVs pull up behind me last year when I was checking it out. And we're going to show you guys what's going on down here in East Palestine. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so that we have better view. And Rio's in the back seat behind me, so he just doesn't want to be on film right now, I guess. I don't know. I'll show you guys later. I'll show you he's all healthy and happy. Been having a lot of fun with our chicken ladies, puppies, and chickens, and ducks, and kids, and craziness.
So we're going to skip a couple of minutes until we see some action, which is around the 4-minute mark. There we go.
So here, guys. Now the tracks are going to be on the right, and the holding tanks for the water and stuff are on the left. Yeah, that's what I thought. The holding tanks on the left, back there. Of course, we've got all kinds of stuff going on over here. Zoom you guys out some. Hopefully, so you guys can see all of this. Over here, we've got the tanks. Over there, guys, those are the tanks there for the water. Oh man, I can feel it down here. Oh, my lips just got like fire. And it smells down here. And my eyes are burning. Oh, that's cool. Not cool. Not cool at all, guys. Not cool at all. Oh my God.
So where's Joe Biden? Did he poop his pants again? Really amazing. The government is supposed to clean all this crap up, but they don't do that. It's up to the people who live there. Very, very sad to see. But we have Soup Mama giving packages and stuff like that, helping out those people. So if there's anyone in America watching, right, give clothing to the people of East Palestine, or give them a call, ask them what they need, right? Because no one is helping them aside from a few people here and there. You know, these people really need help. So, and when the government does not do anything anymore, we have to help ourselves, right? So, we're going to shut down with Ollie the Octopus. And we're going to see, oh, no, wait. That's the wrong octopus. I think it was with a Y, right? Ollie the Octopus. There you go. You're paying attention now, aren't you? Now, this was after the London riots. People got shot and killed, basically, by cops. And there were people that wanted answers and did not get answers. And one thing started and got out of hand. You know, and all these stores were ravaged by angry looters. So here we have Boris Johnson, which was a mayor back then. This was before he was prime minister, before he was partying in Downing Street, right? When everyone needed to stay home and stuff like that. No more than 2 people in your house, and you know, these stupid rules. But he was partying in Downing Street, right? And this guy is a real crook. He's a real crook. If you listen to Tucker Carlson and Putin, he was saying that the English prime minister back then prevented the peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia. So he's a real crook.
Thank you. You are the true spirit of this city.
In the streets of London, the peace has been disturbed. Fires burning everywhere, the language of the unheard. There's a generation thwarted with no ownership and pride, and fat cats with bellies as wide as the rich and poor divide. A broken social contract, bottom-up austerity. Oh, we can condemn it, but we're paying attention now, aren't we? Blame it on the hoodies, blame it on the feral youth. But remember, you were young once and you cared about the truth. We sold out to the free market, made a couple of billionaires, and all we got was this mess and McDonald's everywhere. Keep unemployment high, keeps the cost of labor low, keeps young men out on the streets, and well, what do you know? Down to Dixon's, you can take some stuff for free. You can get an Apple Mac and a high-def TV. But if you work in Canary Wharf in a bank too big to fail, there's much better better looting going on, and you don't have to go to jail. Steal from a generation for the pockets of a few, but it can only go so far, and you're paying attention now, aren't you? Of London, the peace has been disturbed. Fires burning everywhere, the language of the unheard. There's a generation thwarted with no ownership and pride, and fat cats with bellies as wide as the rich and poor divide. A broken social contract, bottom up austerity. Oh, we can condemn it, but we're paying attention now, aren't we? Blame it on the hoodies, blame it on the feral youth. But remember, you were young once and you cared about the truth. We sold out to the free market, made a couple of billionaires, and all we got was this mess and McDonald's everywhere. Keep unemployment high, keeps the cost of labour low, keeps young men out on the streets, and well, what do you know? Down to Dixon's, you can take some stuff for free. You can get an Apple Mac and a high-def TV. But if you work in Canary Wharf in a bank too big to fail, there's much better looting going on, and you don't have to go to jail. Steal from a generation for the pockets of a few, but it can only go so far, and you're paying attention now, aren't you?
We love you, Ollie. We love you. You know, it's an amazing song you got there, and we love playing it. So we will be back on Sunday giving you history and stuff like that, news, and it's been more specified on Tucker Carlson and Russia, but I do not want a World War III, even though we are in a World War III, but I don't want to pick a fight with Russia. These people know how to wage a war, right? So we need to quit that, and America needs to quit being the bully around the world, right? We do not need that. So that is my hopes, and let's see if we can achieve that. We will see each other next time. Bye-bye.